Hi, and welcome to the Return Homestead. Today I'm going to give you some quick ideas for gifts that you can make for last minute, or if you just want some incredible spices to put in your pantry that give your meats or whatever it is you're cooking a little pizzazz. So the first one I'm going to do today is a dill pickle salt. We normally get a great harvest of zucchini and other squashes, and I usually end up making spicy dill pickles. And I use zucchini, I've used pineapple squash, I've used zucchino, whatever squash you have on hand. Some of them will get a little soft, but that's okay for recipes like this. So what I ended up doing is, this has the homegrown dill, but it also has homegrown cayenne in it as well. So I took the pickles and the cayenne peppers out. They also have a little onion and some dill. This is bouquet dill. If you can see that, that's why they call it that. Looks like a little bouquet. Easy to grow. And then you just hang it upside down, let it dry in your pantry, you're good to go. So this was from 2 years ago. It's still very potent. I took all of my pickles and I put them in a small dehydrator. It doesn't need to be anything fancy. You can even do it in a very low temp oven and dry them out. And I took these and dried them out along with the onions and the dill for putting in this salt. Now, this is kosher salt, this right here, and this is enough for 3 recipes. This is the brine from the pickles. Don't ever throw your brine away. I use this for making a ranch dressing I make. I use it for recipes such as this. There's always uses for this, and I never throw it away. So each recipe calls for a teaspoon, and I'll put roughly about that. Okay, a little extra. And you're going to mix that in. Now I've already got my oven set to 200. And it just came up to temp. I'm going to put this on a piece of parchment paper on a cookie sheet and dry it out in the oven. If you don't want to do that, you can just put it on parchment paper and leave it on your counter. It will dry overnight. But this will be really good for putting on hamburgers. You could put it on the potato salad if you haven't caught that video. You can pretty much put it on anything. It's got a lot of flavor. And it's a great way for using extra squash. So once it's all mixed up, then you've got the pickle juice over the salt. You're just going to dump it out on a cookie sheet, piece of parchment paper. It smells great. You want to spread it out thinly, because if you're as impatient as I am, you want it to dry quickly. Usually in the winter time is the time you stock your pantry with things like seasoned salts or vinegars, which that video is coming up too. spice mixes, anything like that. But this makes a great gift. And it's something you don't see often, if ever, in a store. So I'm going to pop this into the oven. Now while that's drying, I have a small chopper. You can use a food processor, a blender, whatever you want to use. And you're going to want the S-blade. And I'm going to drop these in here and just get them into smaller chunks. You're just going to want to pulse this. You don't want to powder it. You just want smaller chunks. Cayenne. Woo. When I clean out my jars, I never throw the lids away, but I turn them upside down to let me know that it's an old lid. And yes, I know it's not customary or it's not approved, but I do reuse my lids and they do seal. As long as this rubber part is good and it's not damaged and you don't bend it when you open it, they're great for something like this if you don't feel comfortable about it. So since this mixture already is spicy, I'm going to take the dried cayennes that I pulled out of it, and I just dehydrated these, and I'm going to put them in a jar with a lid, and I'm going to slap a label on it and it'll go back in the pantry. I don't waste anything. Everything gets used. And it's ready for the next project. Now I'm going to take some dill from last year, the whole bouquet. Basically what you want is the leaves. They're very feathery. But I'm going to add those and probably a bouquet. No, maybe not that much. And you'll notice there are no seeds on this. I pull the seeds off and save them for the next year's planting. I save all my seeds. Okay, I'm going to give this a quick grind. And now we're just waiting on the salt to be dried. So while the pickle salt is in the oven drying out to make sure that all the brine is now in the salt, I'm going to make the next one, and that is jalapeno lime salt. I always start with the jar I'm using to fill, if you want to fill it. And I have that salt here. Now because I am using powdered jalapeno peppers, these are freeze-dried, and I don't have any of the fresh jalapenos, so I'm going to use the powders. I love using food powders, and this is a good way to use it. But because I'm using a food powder, I don't want it to get lost in the coarse salt, so I'm using regular kosher salt. I have 3 limes here that I zested and dried. That'll go in that. Now I also have dried whole limes. This has the pith in it, so it has a somewhat astringent taste because the pith of the fruit is pretty bitter. I am going to add just a touch of that, but not a lot. smells good. And then I'm going to add some jalapeno pepper powder. Now, this is to taste, however hot you want it or don't want it. Well, if you're making it with jalapenos, you obviously like spice. Now, you could use all lime powder, but I like to see the little flecks of the lime zest in there. Again, you can zest your limes, you can dry them in the oven, you can put them out on the counter, you can put them in front of a wood stove, whatever works for you to just dry them out. What isn't dry, the salt will obviously dry. Again, this could go on any meat you're making, could go on salads, whatever it is you're wanting to season up. It would be great on fish. Any citrus is good on fish. Capsaicin's gonna make me sneeze. It's getting there. Not quite. So drying or freeze drying your peppers is a great way to process those for long-term storage. If you freeze dry them, it makes them shelf stable for many years. If you dry them, maybe through the next season. And this salt will last through the season. Now I ended up putting quite a bit more jalapeno in there. We like things very spicy. And the salt really does tame down the peppers. Now if you use chopped jalapeno and dry it, you won't have to use as much because it actually gives a better presentation to see those chunks of jalapenos in there. So you're just going to put this into a jar. Make sure I have the right jar. You're just going to put this in a jar. Capsaicin keeps making me sneeze, guys. I reuse all my lids, like I said. Here it is. You're going to put a label on it. Also, if you're using the chunk jalapeno, you can use the kosher salt, and it again will be a your presentation. And there's one. Now I need to check on my pickle salt. So I ended up putting the pickle salt back in the oven because I added about a half a cup of brine to it. I don't normally follow any recipe exactly as it's written. That's the fun of cooking. It's sort of like artwork. You can put your own taste into your cooking to suit you or your family's needs. Like I've mentioned many times, Mike and I like our flavors to be real robust. And since we a mostly meat diet, we like it to really make the meat pop. So I put a lot more brine back into it. It will add extra spice. That way it will wake up the flavor of the meat. You could put it over regular rice. It would, with a little butter, it would make a meal out of the white rice. You could put it in beans, whatever. So it's back in the oven drying. So while the pickle salt is back in the oven drying out even more, we're going to make a Mediterranean salt. Again, I'm starting out with most of a jar of sea salt or kosher salt, whatever you want to use. And then I zested some oranges and let those dry in front of the fireplace last night. And I'm going to add that. And this is maybe 3 oranges. Okay. And then I've got some fennel. And there's no recipe to this. It's just what you want. So I'm going for presentation. So as I'm mixing this, I will be adding more. Fennel's an interesting herb. It's something that I really want to grow this year. My herb garden suffered this year because after we found the copperhead in my herb garden, I didn't go back in there. So the rosemary I have was what I was able to get before we found the snake. My bush is probably froze by now. So it looks like I ended up putting about 4 or 5 tablespoons of fennel in there. Now you're going to use some oregano. Maybe a couple tablespoons. And sage. This is sage that we grew. And I'm going to just break it in chunks. Again, I'm going for presentation. This I simply hung in my pantry and let it dry. If it can do that in Kentucky, you can do it just about anywhere. In the high desert, we just hung it. It was dry next day. Took a little longer here. So it looks like I'm putting in about 1/4 cup. For those of you who like recipes. Me, not so much. You just wing it. Okay, so the sage is in there. Oregano, rosemary. This is our rosemary that I was able to harvest before the snake got to it. So maybe 1/8 cup. Again, it's just looks, and that's basically what I'm going for, is the look. Then you're going to add garlic granules. I didn't grow garlic this year. I'm sure I'm going to wish I had. I'm going to step up my herb game next year for sure. And then peppercorns. Looks like about, I don't know, 1/8 cup. And this gets loaded into a jar. And there's the rosemary orange salt. Now that my salt infused with pickle brine's done, I'm going to add the ground up pickles that I dried with the onions. Now these were spicy pickles, so it will have a little punch to it. Shouldn't be too bad. Once that's all mixed up, you're going to load that into your jar. You want to let your salt cool so there's no condensation. You'll put a lid on it. I've already got it labeled, and that one's done. Okay, so the next one I'm making is a basic spice rub. And this is usually for meats, but I have 1.5 cups of salt in here. To that, I'm going to add paprika. You can use the smoked or the regular. And it's a couple of tablespoons. Actually, I want 6 tablespoons of paprika. Or roughly. Okay. And you're going to want oregano. And again, that's to taste. So I put a couple of palms full. Dry mustard. One more. I have small hands, so. And I'm going to be using white pepper. We like white pepper, it's easier to digest. One, two, three. I'm not gonna put a bunch. White pepper is a little spicier than regular pepper. Okay, then you need thyme, and you'll want about 6 tablespoons of that as well. Okay. And then you're going to want chili powder. And I'm going to want 6 of these. Again, this is not precise, it's to your taste. And since they're all heaping, we'll stop there. And this gets all mixed up. Now this will probably make 2 jars, just what I've done. You can make smaller batches if you choose. And again, you can add any blend that you want. You could add garlic to this, it would be very good. But it smells wonderful if you were here. But it's nice to have all of these spices on hand while you're cooking so you don't have to stop in what you're doing. You're just going to slap a label on that. And that one's done. Okay, I thought I had the camera running when I made the barbecue meat rub. I did not. So let me give you the recipe. The recipe will only fill halfway up a pint jar. So you could put this in 4-ounce pints. You could double the recipe if you wanted, or get those little tiny jars, and that way it would allow you to spread them out to more people. And you could do that with all of these. You don't have to use pints or half pints. I'm stocking my pantry. So the barbecue meat rub is 1/3 cup of salt, 1/4 cup smoked paprika, 1/4 cup chili powder, 1 tablespoon of garlic, 1 tablespoon of dry mustard, 2 teaspoons of oregano, 2 teaspoons of cumin, 3 1/4 teaspoons of pepper. I used white, 1/2 teaspoon of cayenne, and 1/2 teaspoon of onion powder. Now, I like onion powder and things, and especially for a barbecue rub, so I added a tablespoon. And that's the barbecue meat rub. The last salt is a chili salt, and I'm going to use, in this case, chilies de árbol. These I have ground up. If you don't know what those are, you can get them at any grocery store. And they're big, long red peppers. Similar to a cayenne, not as hot, a little more flavor, but I keep them ground up because I add them to a lot of dishes. So I'm going to add some of the ground up chili flakes, red pepper flakes. You can put pepper powder. I've got mixed peppers here. This is a mixture of both sweet and hot peppers. I freeze-dried them and powdered them. I add them to a lot of things, but I'm just going to put the chili in there. And then another thing you can add is, I have cilantro that I have freeze-dried. When you freeze-dry a lot of herbs, it takes the flavor out, so it's not even a strong cilantro smell. Some people either love it or hate it. I'm adding it for color because you want to think about your presentation on these. I didn't get a big cilantro harvest this year, so right now I'm picking out the stems. I could have done that when I stuck them in the jar, but there's always more to do. It'll all get done. You just can't get in a hurry, except for I do. Okay, now I'm going to load all of this in the jar. Oh, these peppers are really making me sneeze. And you just want to load it in your jar, and that one's done. And here's a bonus. So if you get somebody that doesn't do a lot of cooking, doesn't have any use for spices, here's one that most people will like. You're going to take a 2-ounce bottle, like I have here. You're going to fill it halfway with witch hazel. Okay. Then you're going to take whatever essential oil you want. I'm using lavender because this is a linen spray and lavender is soothing. You're going to want 30 to 40 drops for 2 ounces. Again, I don't follow recipes. And then you're going to fill the rest of the way with filtered water. Put the spray top on it, and you can spritz this over your pillowcases, your bed linens, your towels, whatever. If you've got guests coming for the holiday, this is a good thing to spray with. Well, I hope you liked this video. I hope it gives you lots of ideas and inspiration for making your own Christmas gifts. These are things you would normally have in the house. These are things that most people would like. We ended up with 7 different seasonings. We ended up with the chili peppers, and I added cilantro to that. This is the Mediterranean salt. It's real pretty. The orange really pops it out. And I did end up putting some chiles de árbol in that because I wanted the red in it. This is the basic spice rub for meat. This is the barbecue meat rub. This is the rosemary orange salt. This one is the jalapeno lime salt. And this one is the pickle salt. This one's really interesting. It'd be good. All of these things would be good on rice dishes or in soups and stews, in whatever. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Give us a thumbs up if this video helped you. Until we see you next time, remember to return to the land, return to labor, and return to life. Until next time, bye-bye.